Hello everyone, I hope you are doing well. Welcome to my first ever drawing tutorial. As you can tell by its title, we will be drawing some hair today. I have received some compliments on how I draw hair, so I figured you might be interested in seeing how I do it. I will be showing you two ways, since recently I have started leaning more towards watercolor style drawings with texture. You can see example on the left, but I use brushes that are not default and I bought them, and those are Krisa Messy Ink, and it's by creator named Krisa Buck, and I got it on her Patreon, and Walter Wet with no border, which is part of Friend and Brush set. It costs like $15 and it has more than 800 brushes, I believe, so it's really good deal. The other brushes I use are default Clip Studio paint brushes. The drawing on the right is how I used to do hair. It's more cartoony and flashy, but depends on what style you are aiming for. I find that the first method is more complex and the second is easier. Now let's draw some hair. First, let's start with the sketch. I usually use airbrush to do my sketches, but you can use just whatever, in whatever color you wish. Unless you are a pro, I'd recommend you to do more detailed sketches because it makes your line art step much more quicker and easier in my opinion. I like to split my hair in sections and draw them that way, but honestly it's just up to you. I just find this way the easiest, I guess, and it looks nice. After my sketch is done, I create a new layer and lower the opacity of my sketch layer as much as needed. I just eyeball it usually. For my line art, I currently use Krisa Messy Ink brush, but you can use G Pen as well. I always make sure my stabilization is set at 50 or higher. With G Pen, I usually go with 80 to 100 stabilization. Thickness of brush varies, but I go from 10 to 30. As for color, always match your line art color to your hair color. Either use a darker version of the main hair color or at least color that won't bother too much. For example, with pink or green hair, I went with brown line art and it looked really nice. And don't worry too much, you can always adjust the color of your line art through Edit, Tonal Correction, Hue, Saturation and Luminosity. You can edit this whenever. I make long lines for the hair part and indicate some strands inside them, as you can see. I'll just make copy of my line art real quick since I'll be showing you two different examples. Let's start with watercolor style textured hair. I'm picking the strands with Magic Wand tool, refer to all layers mode, and then I use lasso tool with selection mode, add to selection, the one with the plus sign. To manually pick the parts Magic Wand has missed. If your line art doesn't have closed borders, Magic Wand won't work. You can either use just lasso tool or you can also color manually as you prefer, but I do this because it's much quicker. Then I will create a new layer in normal mode and put it under my line art layer. For brush, I'm using Walter Wet brush with pen pressure turned off. For color, I tend to usually pick middle tone or at least make sure I always can go lighter and darker with my color. And I will just color all strands this way. Next is shading. I will create a new layer above the flat color one and clip it to it. And I set the layer to hard light mode. For shading, I'm using purplish gray. Don't worry if it doesn't match completely, we will adjust it through, again, Edit, Tonal Correction, Hue, Saturation, Luminosity later. Also, just a side note, from this step you have to be mindful where your light source is. Mine is just in front of the face. I paint the hard shades with G pen brush, and alternating between smooth watercolor and watercolor brush, I smudge them and add more shades. In the end, I adjust the color of the layer the way I have mentioned before. For highlights, I again create a new layer and set it to add glow mode. I put it above the shading layer and again clip it. I'm using pastel version of the main hair color, and the add glow mode will give it a nice kick. First I chose airbrush, set it on bigger size and softly paint main highlights where the main force of your light source falls the most. Then I pick Krisa Messy ink brush again and add some highlighting strands. After this step is done, I return to the base layer for a bit, change the color to something slightly darker than the base color, and again do the same thing as with highlighting, just paint some random strands so the hair looks more textured. As the finishing touch, I create a new layer in Add Glow mode above my line art layer, and with pastel color again I draw few thicker, more dominant strands here and there, and I airbrush some more glow. You can also add sparkles at this point or any further decorations as you wish. And we are done. The second method is much quicker and easier in my opinion. I'm using again middle tone for base color. I put it on the normal mode under the line art layer. You can again select the hair with magic wand tool, lasso tool, or just color manually. With shading, the difference is I'm using a normal mode layer and a darker version of a base color. So I'll make a new layer above the main color one and clip it. First I add some shades with airbrush on hairline and the bottoms, but you can skip this step. Then again with a G pen I paint shades. I blend them roughly using smooth watercolor and then use watercolor brush set to 30 usually to draw strands. With this method I add a lot more of them, as you can see. Then I switch to our clipped Add Glow layer, and again, first I paint some main highlights with big airbrush. Then I switch to watercolor brush again, set it to around 20, and again start painting strands. And that's basically it for second method. It's, as I said, really easy and it works. If you are a beginner and you are looking for some nice way to draw hair, I think this is the way to go because it's super easy and it looks nice for what it is, I would say. Thank you so much for watching and also for your support. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, I'll be happy to answer them, and perhaps tell me in the comments which method do you prefer. Don't forget to check links in my description and follow me on my other social media for more content. Thank you again for watching and see you very soon in my next video. Have a nice day!